I had lost a very interesting job that I completely understand the logic around it, and I completely agree with it. Um, I came from a work environment where we would be briefed in the morning, both safety rules, things that have occurred in the shop, and then you would get a work order and instructions of what your task or the task they hope that you can complete in the day, and then you will report back anything that was not completed, the reason why, so on and so forth. And they had cameras on you, so you were always being relatively observed. And then I went to change my career path after watching a coworker get caught in a lathe, and I guess it scarred me a little bit, and I didn't want to be a statistic. I'm like one of those people that really thinks about probabilities, and eventually, if you complete the same task over and over again, your chances eventually start reaching that point where it zeroes out, and you end up being that person who get caught in a lathe, and that, and just the monotony and boringness of turning down parts, just it got to me. Is I was hungry. I'm still hungry, and that's one thing that makes me fascinated with this last job that I lost, because under my observation, and they knew to a certain extent that I came from a way different environment. And I know that the secretary pretty much hint that you got to be able to read minds, and I'm not a mind reader. I am an order. I take orders. Is something I've always been. But at least I tried doing it. I tried figuring and listening and observing the conversations that were going between the two individuals that I worked at. And they're actually great individuals. I have no complaints really. I can't talk shit about them, but they mesh up. They're like puzzle pieces to a puzzle. They make up the whole picture, and I'm basically like this oblong, weird shaped puzzle piece that didn't fit in. And it's not that I don't fit in to the job at hand, because I'm pretty sure that if any of them ever watch this video, they'd be shocked about how much information I actually observed when I was actually working there. They're taking pictures and the homework that I did, that now I'm actually got this new type of motivation that's kind of overwhelming me, that I actually might go out and pursue, doing more well work. And I, you know, I know that out there's at least a well of money I don't have direct taps to, but I know if haggled correctly and convincing, that I could open up that well and you know gather some funds and go out on my own, and and out of respect, stay relatively away from the turf. I noticed that there seems to be a relatively drought or lack thereof, because of how many times we traveled over to the southeast side of the city and southwest side of the city. Generally, the south side of town was a little bit of their weak point. They didn't want to go down there unless there was actually money to gain. And I know that money is the main factor on how this place works, because it was mentioned multiple times from the owner, and it is a single owned, family oriented or family run company. It's basically around the owner of the shop, which is really cool, because I've never observed that, and he reminded me of my grandfather in many ways. He had past military experience and so on and so forth. Relatively intelligent guy, but he also seems like one of those people that they're just like me in certain ways, where he just wants to relax, not be stressed out, and let everyone kind of run in autopilot. And that's one thing I really observed. And I fortunately I couldn't fit in that description for him. That I was not that perfect puzzle piece or close to it. So I'm pretty sure there's already been people who've run through there, and they're probably going to go and try to grab him back or something like that. But I'm not exactly sure what's going on. I know there was a lot of issues when it came to maintenance of the vehicles. They had like a really big rig that apparently they they never really checked the oil on. I'm pretty sure sitting out in that hot sun running, it's a good idea to actually check the lubrication of all the moving parts. But those guys are far more intelligent than I could ever be. So we all know why that occurred. But uh, and then the paranoia started to run. It seemed like I was probably looked upon as an unlucky foot, a black foot, an anti-rabbit's foot. And I kind of agree with it, because in my observation, I watched the individual I was working with. He made a few errors that are not technically his fault. It's just unseen, like from tightening something too much and it cracking off to, you know, just losing stuff or anything like that, or jobs being canceled, or some scenario, and they try to take it on me, but it completely rubbed off me like nothing, because it's like, you know what, I am here, and if I was set out on my own and I was able to perfect the knowledge I was grabbing, I could easily partake and do it in a comfortable manner and befriend everyone. So, like, I just recently knew that a well can be contaminated with salmonella. It's like, I didn't know that. I thought salmonella would have to have the breakdown of like animal matter, but apparently plant matter or anything in general, I guess, can cause it. Or this guy's chicken coop. So, little things like that. It sticks in the head, and the only thing that I might need to patch up, which I plan on doing, is a little bit more about the electrical, because I do know that electrons, they work in a packet ratio. They have a wavefront and all that stuff, and he's talking about the numbers on the sheet and stuff like that. But one thing that was really interesting is that when splicing a different size, and I come to the conclusion, after he spilled it out, that the wires, it's how thick they are is not the thickness of the actual copper part. It's just because the outer layer of the wire going down the well is thicker for insulation purposes. So and it struck me, I already knew this kind of stuff. This stuff is rudimentary. It's just I didn't know how many wires were needed for certain tasks and stuff like that. But lucky enough, I took pictures. I've been doing my homework, and the guy I was working with, he didn't like specifically would look at me, because he, when he was talking to me, it's like, how many wires do we need to run? It's like, pick blah 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 blah, and or I guess he was expecting me to unfold, that I should grab, red, yellow, black, and green for ground and all this other stuff, and he would bring out, there's different color wires, and it's just that stuff right there, the rudimentary stuff, is what really kind of hit me. Is that, I wanted confirmation. I was trying to just observe, to be taught, and and they wanted me to interact and know, and that's one thing that I really found fascinating, is that in many ways that I tried jumping the gun, and I felt like it failed on me, or so on and so forth. That, and not knowing certain small things. Like, I'm not a big drinker. If I drink, I'll go to the bar. Like, apparently you're not supposed to pick up a 12 pack of beer with the top, and it's like, oh, because it rips open. That's where stupid shit like that. And I had a lot of embarrassments in front of the owner there. The motor, I found out that when you grab the motor box, if it's heavy, you actually have to reach all the way in and go around the cupper. There's like a box lining inside of it, cardboard lining that's thicker. You don't grab it from the top layer, you grab it from that thicker part that's holding the motor in place. Then you can actually lift the motor up by one hand. And I picked up a 5 horsepower. I didn't know that, and it ripped, and they're heavy, and it ripped out of the hand and hit the ground. I know that's a lot of money to hit the ground, but I shrugged it off. But all this stuff was observed and documented, and I'm pretty sure emailed and chatted about. But being someone that never really been in that environment, you can't stress yourself out about it. I am completely not stressed, because they don't understand that I'm far more intelligent than they ever could imagine. I could write code. I can do all that stuff. I might not know how to write properly the description of wells, because I've never done it before, or the spelling of certain words, because that muscles were not exercised, a mental muscle. But I'm going to tell you right now, they walked out on something, and they planted a seed in me, and I'm going to make it grow. And when the time comes, and I get a pool of money that comes in, instead of being like a mosquito, I might be like, how can I put this, a vicious predator. So I'm definitely going to look into it, and I'm not going to just narrow my horizon to certain pump types and stuff like that. I actually might experiment and go forward, because I have bits of land, out in the country. We got cattle ranches, and we got land on the east side of Texas, and I actually might experiment in drilling. I've been watching videos and researching. It doesn't seem all that hard. So yeah, so this is the reason why I'm very thankful for the minimum amount of time that I actually worked at with this drilling company. I've been in drilling, but I've been in drilling when it comes to oil, not in water. And as the atmosphere of the world changes and the green movement grows bigger, you know, I got nothing really wrong with it because we need ways to spur new technology, and we just can't sit around the combustion engine forever. So, water is definitely my forte, and it's one of my big fascinations because in the future we might actually wage wars over it. I mean, I mentioned to them that Syria was not because of just ideology or anything like that. It's just ideologies started crashing inside the city centers because all the farmers out in Syria were losing land. There was no water out there for them. So, and the actual local government couldn't maintain stability, and a civil war broke out. And you got to understand that country is basically just a friendly territory of Russia. And that's why, that whole situation on the news and stuff about, Russia going in and trying to liberate Syria is all because of water. And that's one thing a lot of people are. It's like, oh, don't believe everything you read on the internet. Global warming isn't real, and all this. I don't really care. You know, I worked at a company that these guys were like hoarding. They were like saving for the apocalypse. And when I was cleaning hoods and stuff like that, and just listening to them, it's like these people are real. There's people actually out there that think this senile way, and there is, and they talked so conservative, like so, like they worship Trump, but the the company that I was working at had maybe 6 illegals working there. So how can you call yourself something when you preach it but you don't follow it? It's kind of like being a Christian. It all adds up in the same scenario. And I don't have any disrespect for anyone that comes here because we allow them in. They're going to be here, and all that stuff. But I don't like to exacerbate or to feed this narrative that everyone can come in. Everyone can come to this country. Again, this is another situation you could read on the DoD report, DoD, the Department of Defense, that one day there's not one day now there's mass migrations going on all across the planet because of food scarceness, water, beaches eroding away. You know, all that stuff is a scenario that makes me interested in this. So, thanks to working at this place, I am probably going to explore this and grow with it. So, water, I'm coming for you. And I want to learn more about you. So, I'm going to have to get acquainted and where I can find cheaper parts. Um, like, there's these switches with coils, and we all know how the coils work. They're basically just sandwiched pieces of metal in between either a magnetic or a non conductive material to kind of like regulate or slow down the flow of a voltage. So that's one thing that really interests me is I was sitting there watching them change out a coil on one job, and it's like why? Because when I looked at them, they had both the punch serial number and everything was the same. Really, it was the top of the control box that had these little metal thin filament pieces that fell into grooves perfectly, and there's a little instruction manual that discussed how you lay those out is how that switch is going to function, how it's going to output. So apparently those little switches, you can run them higher and lower. So yeah, I saw him do that, but he also changed that coil out. But my question was why did he change that coil out? So that's like those are little areas that I still need to fill in. So and and another thing is that they try to explain it on the front of the box. That's one thing I was looking at, and I finally caught it because I know how the box lays out. That it's a pump with electronics built into it. Like all the stuff is just probably a rudimentary logic board or something that's inside the motor bay instead of being an actual complete control box, which probably makes it cheaper and easier on the installer. So that's one thing I didn't notice at first, and I thought everything needed a control box. Because to me, it's like keeping it simple. It seems to be the best way to do it. But no, some of these lower end motors, or I guess uh, smaller output motors, they're they run without a control box. And that's one thing that made me interested is like I know they're all two faces. So I guess if you go on the lower three faces, they still need a control box. So you can see the small bits of of the equation that I still need to fill in. But yeah, I feel like I got this down. So uh, other things I got to think about is the big circuit box. When I was in high school, I took electronics class, right? So I used to install the circuit boxes for the whole house, the breaker box in the back of the house, and it was actually really rudimentary. You just put it in there and stuff like that. But they never really explained the gauges of wire. But all the wire we worked at in the shop was the same. And we actually took a class on this, and we actually wired up all the equipment in the wood shop area, and we also did acid bath circuit boards. So I'm starting to think that if I can get that part down, this is something I need to because these new boxes. Apparently, I'm getting old because they're way different looking from the shit I used to see back in high school. I mean, they're I don't know if they're safe or whatever, but there's a lot more exposed sections of metal, like large ground sections and stuff like that. That so you know that there's enough power in running through those to fry, uh, to fry some skin off the hand and stuff like that. So, but and and there was always a little bit of a scare thing going on with my my quote unquote trainee about 480 will knock you out and all that sort of stuff. And I got knocked out by a capacitor and a power supply and a computer, but I know that's not the same thing. This current can make you grab on and stick to a part. Well, I had almost 40,000 volts of electricity travel through my body one time, sent me to the hospital, and I had a arrhythmia. So I have utmost respect for electricity. So that those big circuit breaker boxes is something that I might have to go to school. I want to learn more about it because if I'm going to go into that, I want to make sure that I got that stuff nailed down pat. So that's one thing that I'll probably be looking into in the next couple of weeks as I try to feed this, I guess, this motivative new nature of myself that I've created. I'm not going to let losing this job bring me down. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to feed upon the knowledge that I've gathered and make myself far greater than they could even imagine I would have been if I was working for them. So that being said, uh, some experimentations definitely have to take place. Um, the oh man, and so some of the things I've seen in the last couple of weeks were magical in my opinion. Every time we traveled somewhere, it was like going on an adventure. It was something new, some new scenario, and he's ran into him a lot, multiple times. He talked about pumps that you should walk away from, stuff like that, and because they just don't deal with it. I mean, that stuff is really what intrigues me, and that's why I don't want to leave this. I don't want to stand in a stagnant environment behind a lathe. So that's one thing that I'm going to have to approach this as well. That I have to poke at and prod at. It's very much like the owner of the shop I used to work at. But if I can pitch him on the right idea, I think I might be able to get the ball rolling and become one of probably many that have experimented with this already. But one thing that I plan on doing is, this place let me record and take pictures of a lot of the stuff I was doing. And I asked him, is it okay if I do this? Because what I did is I would take it home and observe it. And I said, if I can make it like short videos as long as I don't describe them. And that's why how this video came about. So thankfully enough for them is that, I'm able to get the know-how and observe the past, and scroll through these pictures like a gallery. So, and that gives me an idea about scenario recording, or what I call quick action sheets, where if I run into a problem or a scenario, kind of like they did, mine will be documented and perfect upon as time goes by. This way, if I ever reach another step where I have to bring a coworker in, I can sit there and run down that scenario with him and have video documentation. So, and one thing I want to do is I want to find someone that's going to be a little bit like me, the adventurous type, the guy that actually finds entertainment and actually doing what he's doing. And unlike this place with the weird communication skills that took place, where people assumed that I didn't know what I was looking at, or I was grabbing the wrong pipe, and all it was trying to move it around or something like that. Yeah, so those little stupid things where they looked upon me as being lesser is probably going to come back and bite them in the ass, because I actually was doing a lot of action. But the thing is that the places I worked at, it was about the verbal communication, not the rolling of eyes or the shitty sign language. So that's one thing that's probably going to set me apart when I finally get this ball rolling. And one thing I've been thinking about is like, if I succeed and actually grow profit, because one thing I'm going to be doing is looking at online distributors instead of actually going to a local distributor. So I'm probably going to be able to run down some probably cheaper parts and kind of get a local knowledge about what is better and what is not, but on the cheaper spectrum. And being a loaner at the beginning is that I might be able to do competitive pricing a lot more effectively. It's like in one of my advertisement gimmicks I might put out is that, compare me with the other guys, right? And I can actually put out the phone number to the places I've already worked at, and give them descriptions of like how I could do it for far less, but I will have far less overhead to be concerned about. So that's one thing that's been going through my head. So and that's why I'm so thankful for having the short time that I had at this place. So yeah, so wish me luck, and I hope you enjoy this video. As I've been talking, I've been kind of scrolling through different photos, and I want y'all to like and subscribe. And if y'all want any knowledge, y'all got anything y'all can help me out with, hey, the you can leave a comment or send me a direct message. I am on Patreon. I have a YouTube channel. I have Facebook, so I have no problem sharing this kind of data. I even give you my my Gmail, my junk mail account, which no one ever really emails me on there. So I'm pretty sure I'll probably get the message relatively quickly. And one thing I want to do is that instead of being tore down or depressed about the little situation I'm in right now, is that what I'm going to try to do is try to reverse it and have a bounce back effect. So that's one thing. So if anyone has any ideas about if business loans or anything like that, or can help me out, I am all ears. Send me some messages, like and subscribe, and I hope to hear back from y'all. Thank you.